Welcome to the We Build Leaders podcast, where we are committed to equip, develop, and resource pastors and local church leaders. My name is Darren Fisher. I'm your host today, joined by Dr. Jay Herndon. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Jay.
Very happy to be
It's
here.
good to have you here. So, Dr. J, you are a man of many, many, many talents. I know where a lot of us are aware here in the district, you're currently finishing up law school to add to that whole journey. But something that I've learned about you that I think is an incredible resource to our local leaders is your understanding of personalities and even how that relates to helping build teams and maybe what I would say is putting the right people on the right seat on the bus in terms of team building, hiring, all those types of things. And so it's something that I've really gleaned from you on and have invited you here to kind of share with us and our listeners a little bit more of this journey. Started for you, I know, with your master's program and really diving deep into that, continue through your doctoral work, and has always been something that you've been very passionate about. So would love to hear from you about this journey with personalities, as it relates to team building, ministry, how it can be a resource to us, and we'd love to learn from you today.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. It's something that understanding personality types and team building and implementing that in ministry has been very important to me. Uh, and I'm just very grateful that the Lord had allowed me to stumble on these things. So let me kind of draw a framework for you. Of course, the Bible tells us that as leaders, our job is to equip the saints for the work of ministry.
Yeah.
And equipping the saints really has three primary issues. First of all, it's about putting tools in people's hands. And so we have to provide and support, people, our leaders, with the tools that they need. Secondly, it's about helping them develop the skills of ministry. So I think of that as the head, developing
Yeah, that's
skills.
good.
So you got the hands, you got the head, and then you got the heart, and that's about the personal development. And as a leader, developing leaders, developing teams, the tools are fairly easy to provide, and the skills are transferable. They can learn those. It's the last that is always the biggest challenge, and it's dealing and helping people with their heart and their maturity and their growth, and working together as a team. In fact, just yesterday we had some contractors at my house to do some work, and they weren't working together very well.
Not that good of a team.
They were not a good team, and their communication together was very poor, and their emotions were getting in the way. And I actually spent probably 3 hours doing marriage counseling between these doing these workers. Uh, and I really want to pull the leader aside and say, hey, you need to lead your team differently. um, which is funny for me being in that role because growing up, everybody knows that I have a personality. My personality is pretty distinct. I am who I am, and you don't have to spend a long time with me to figure that out. Growing up, I want to tell you this a story of two dads. Okay,
Yeah.
so my dad was an auto mechanic, and and he worked on cars. When it came to, he loved to read. Boy, he read. We always grow up reading books and things like that, and having, deep philosophical conversations and discussions about politics and all kinds of things. And when it came to his tools and whatnot, his tools, he didn't necessarily, catalog his tools and put them all in the right drawers and everything. They were kind of scattered around and things like that. And but that was my dad. That's who I grew up with. And then I started dating Terry, and of course I married Terry, and Terry. So Bob became my father-in-law. So I have an earthly father, and then I have a father-in-law, and Bob is also a mechanic, but he's an airline mechanic,
Oh yeah, different
and
breed.
it's a whole different breed,
Yeah.
And his garage is like a library, because he's got a spot for every tool. They're all inscribed with his name and whatnot. And of course, I pretty much stayed out of his garage, so that wasn't a big deal. But the real kind of challenge for me arose when Terry and her mom would go grocery shopping or something, and Terry, they'd be going through the store, and Terry would see something that we need or she wanted, and she'd throw it in the cart, and of course she'd get up there and she didn't have her purse with her or whatever, so her mom would just buy it, and then her mom would come home and hand the receipt to Bob, who kept the books for the family, and but she would say that's Terry's and that's Terry's. And so then Bob would circle those items, and he would come and hand me the receipt, and he would say, you know, you owe me $17.86 or whatever. And of course, I wasn't ready to do. You know, I didn't bring the
Yeah.
cat. I didn't know this was happening, and so I go, oh, okay, I'll bring it tomorrow. You know, and then maybe I'd forget tomorrow, and he would remind me, and I would like, okay, I'm all right. I'll bring it. I'll bring it tomorrow, and then eventually I would bring it. You know, and I'd hand him the $20 bill, and I figure we're done. But he would go back into his little office, and he would go into his cash drawer,
And he would give you
and
change.
he would go and mark the receipt as paid, and bring me out the whatever 23 cents or whatever it
No
was,
way.
and he hand it to me and said, "There's your change." I'm like, "Hey, I don't need that change." You know? It's like, you know, this is family, you know, and it used to just really puzzle me. It's like, what is? I don't understand that behavior, you know. And a couple times I thought, does he not trust me? You know, am I? I was, you know, is he getting frustrated? I just didn't get it, you know. So that's one story. So then I have another story is that, you know, at Bible school, I went to Bethany, and we would have these revival speakers come through, and they would preach, and I kind of sit there and listen, and it just kind of, you know, it's just not finding a spot in me, you know. But everybody else is you know, crying and shouting and doing all kinds of stuff, and I'm just like, you know, golly, you know, this is. I'm clearly am not hearing what's happening here. And in fact, I actually concluded that I just wasn't very spiritual. I thought I loved God, but clearly these people love God more than I do
Sure. Yeah.
because they are responding this way, and I'm not. You know, it's just not hitting me. Then we had a professor. We had some great professors too. You know, Norm Arneson, Dr. Colombo. You know, Paul Bruton, Don Ryle. All great, Dr. Ryder. All great professors. And but then Rick Howard came to teach some Bible classes, and when I heard him, it was like every note was a note that I was singing. You know, everything he said found a spot in me.
Wow.
And suddenly there was somebody talking my language. Um, so, of course, he became my mentor. He invited me to join his staff, and he treated me like a son, and he became my mentor for life. Eventually, I moved on to a different church, and Vern Nybakken became my pastor. And now, Vern had never had a son, but he always wanted a son, and he actually told me he wanted me to be his son. And I thought to myself, you know, Rick Howard he's the guy who's talking my
Yeah.
language, but I'm not feeling the same thing from Vern Nybakken. I mean, I liked the guy, respected the guy, but it wasn't the same. And I didn't say anything, but anyway, we spent a lot of time together and whatnot. And I was a youth pastor. We had a situation where we had a couple of very successful events in the youth ministry, and I wanted to kind of raise the level of what we were doing. And I went to him one day, and I told him what my plan was, and he just flat out said no. And I went away from that. I really struggled. You know, why would he say no? And so I came back to him, and I thought, you know, the honest thing for me to do is to go and talk to him, and I explained to him, Pastor, I really I really think we should be doing this. I mean, you've said no, and I will follow your instructions, but I just want you to know that I don't really agree with the decision. But
Right.
I will follow you. And I thought that was the honorable thing to do. Well, he fired me.
Yeah, that's not what you were expecting
That's not
going
what I
into
was
that
expecting.
conversation. Yeah.
So I have these, you know, I have they have these two fathers, and I have these two bosses, and and then so then I went to, well, he fired me, so I went to graduate school, and the entrance requirements required me to take a bunch of different types of tests, and one of them was the Myers-Briggs personality type inventory. And so I took the Myers-Briggs personality type inventory, and just in reading how the questions are worded, I began to get revelation. And then when I got the results back, suddenly it became clear what was going on
Wow.
with those people. Why my relationship with Pastor Nybakken went so badly, you know. I realized it was about a personality preference, and why I resonated so much with Pastor Howard versus some of the other great godly Bible teachers. It had to do with personality preference. I was wired this way, and Rick Howard is wired the same way, so that's one of the reasons we resonated. But Pastor Nybakken was wired differently, and that's why. And I wasn't even aware of it.
Yeah, so it's kind of a light bulb moment for you.
It was an epiphany.
Yeah.
Suddenly, it made sense. And of course, I'd rush home. I'd tell Terry all about it, and I'd try to talk our way through it. I was so excited about this revelation, and that's really what began for me learning about the Myers-Briggs personality type inventory and how I could implement it into my life. So let me explain a little bit about where this comes from. Okay, so uh, way back in the 5th century, Hippocrates developed a personality schema, right? The cholera, phlegmatic, sanguine. Um, I'm missing one of them. Melancholy.
Yes.
He developed those 4 types of personalities, and he developed that, and which really was kind of a combination of several things. But anyway, so after that, you know, centuries go on, and the world of psychology kind of took a weird turn, and there was Freud was doing his thing and whatnot, and then there was a Swiss psychologist named Carl Jung, who was a Catholic, and he kind of saved psychology uh, by bringing it back, and he took Hippocrates' 4 types, and he realized that the 4 types were really combination of 2 pairs. He realized that there was combination of the introvert extrovert issue, whether you're introverted or extroverted, and then whether you were sensate or intuitive. He kind of recognized that, so he kind of split it up into the 4
Right.
things. And then later on, Catherine Briggs and Isabel Briggs Myers, mother daughter, uh, they began to take Carl Jung and added 2 more categories to it: the thinking, feeling, and judging, perceiving. And so they ended up with a way in which to help us figure out how people are wired as far as their personality preferences. Now, it's important to note these are not good or bad. It's not moral and immoral. It's not that you're too much this or not enough that. It's just the way you are. It just is.
Yeah, which I think that's really important when you talk about personalities, because a tendency can be to want to try to become what the best one is supposed to be, right? So I have to work to be that way. But this is a tool, really, and there's lots of out there, but it's another tool to help us understand our innate wiring inside of us, which is super valuable for a leader, right? To understand that in other people, that we're all wired a certain way.
Exactly. There are tests out there that test for abnormalities and things. You're too dominant, you're too selfish, and things like that. And obviously, those are bad things or good things or whatever. But this is not it. This is not that type of thing. This is just about understanding personal preferences, personality preferences. We're born this way.
Right.
This is who we are. And you can explore and grow and adjust a little bit, and you change a little bit over time, but for the most part, who you're born with is who you are, and they're not going to change very much. It's just who you are. And for example, my conflict with Pastor Neinbakken, I am a strong T, a thinker, meaning that I make decisions based on logic, right? And honesty and logic is important to me. Whereas he was a very strong F, and F feeling person. They make decisions based on relationships and harmony and
Right.
whatnot. And so when I thought that I was doing the right thing by being honest with him and talking to him, I was respectful. Uh, but I thought that was the right thing to do. He took that as a betrayal, and so he made a decision based on relationship, uh, and I didn't see it coming. So let me explain how the Myers-Briggs works.
Yeah.
So
Please.
there's four basic categories. The first is the introvert extrovert, and so we're going to do this, okay? So the first is the introvert extrovert, and what it is where you focus. Where you focus. Are you more comfortable focusing outside or more comfortable focusing inside? Um, if you try to if you like to be if your comfort level is thinking about things internally versus talking them out with people. One of the side effects of the introvert extrovert thing is basically whether you're energized by people or whether people drain your energy,
Right.
and that's really the side effect. The more important part is whether you're internal and your thoughts and whatnot, or whether you're outside. It's not necessarily about whether you're shy or something. That's a whole different thing. It's just about where your focus is. The next is the intuitive versus the sensate, and so this is a issue of where do you learn? How do you learn things? Sensate people like to see things, touch things, observe things, watch things, measure things. They tend to be very concrete. Um, Intuitive people are imaginative. They're abstract. They can visualize more, and it's just a different way of learning. In fact, one time I did an object lesson with some people, and I was talking about uh, seedship, being a seed, and I didn't have a seed with me, but I had a rock. I said, okay, pretend this is a seed. And this lady said, but it's not a seed, it's a rock. I said, well, let's pretend that it's a seed. Let's imagine it's a seed. It's a rock. We just got stuck there. She didn't have the
Yeah.
ability to imagine that this was a seed. So intuitive and sensate is how you learn. The next is how you make decisions, whether you make decisions on logic or whether you make decisions based on feelings or relationships. And it's about what you base your decisions on. And then the last category is about structure. It's about how you like to structure your life. And you have what they call judging. I don't really like the word judging, but basically it means somebody who has a decision made. Judges make decisions, and some people like to have decisions made, and other people are what they call perceptive, which basically means they don't want to make a decision until the last moment.
Right.
They want to be flexible and a little bit more spontaneous. They want to continue to gather more information and wait. Uh, these folks these folks are uncomfortable. The Jays are uncomfortable with things being open ended. They're uncomfortable with closure because what if I want to change my mind?
Yeah.
you know, the P's, or excuse, no, the P's are uncomfortable with closure because they want to change their mind. The judges are uncomfortable if the decision hasn't been made yet.
Right.
And so basically you got these four kind of categories, and most people tend to be stronger in one area than in another.
Yeah.
Now, there are some people that are just really even across the road, and they're able to kind of move back and forth, but most people are really strong. And in my case, I was the an ultra here on the NT scale, and very very little on the SF scale, and therein explains my affinity for Rick Howard and whatnot, because he was also that way.
Yeah.
And so this helped me explain. As it relates to team members and working together with one another, I developed a little schema to help me, and it's the AAA of uh, of personality types and leadership development is anticipate, accommodate, appreciate. So knowing that some people on my team, for example, they're not intuitive.
Right.
I need to instruct them differently. They need to learn a task, and I need to instruct them differently.
Yeah.
I need to anticipate that. Okay, and I can't treat them the same way I would treat somebody else. Some people are very intuitive. I would just say go get the job done, and they can go and figure it out.
Right.
Other people, you got to lay it out for them. You got to anticipate people,
Right.
right? Anticipate and then accommodate, uh, so that you're gonna act that way, and then appreciate. And the last I think is important. I learned that from my father-in-law, the airline mechanic. Well, that conflict with the whole receipt and all of that, and I was puzzled as to why
Right.
he's acting this way and whatnot. And then suddenly I realized that he is a super strong J, and then I realized he's an airline mechanic. He that's the
Yeah.
he is exactly the kind of guy you want working on your airplane, because he is going to follow the checklist, check
Yeah.
every box, and make sure that all of his tools are back in the drawer and none of the tools are left in the engine. Uh, he's the kind of guy that you want working on your airplane.
Yeah.
And so that's when I began to realize I could really appreciate that. Even though that's not my type, I can appreciate that's his type.
Yeah, I really like that. I love that AAA, right? Anticipate, accommodate, appreciate. I think that's so valuable for all these personalities. Now, Dr. J, I know you have so much more to share, and so what we're gonna do right here is we're gonna pause this episode right here of the We Build Leaders podcast. So this is episode 1 of this mini series. So we're gonna continue in our next episode, hearing some more from Dr. J about Myers Briggs, about personalities, how that matters. He's gonna dig a little deeper. So if you're enjoying this, join us, continuing the conversation with us in our next episode as we hear more from Dr. J regarding Myers Briggs. So thanks, Dr. J. We'll see you in the next episode.